John, while recognising the specific benefits of the relationship with one of the Middle Eastern carriers for Virgin Blue, Qantas has said consistently while you were there and beyond that the domestic market can't support 3 domestic carriers, and 2 of them now internationally oriented, when you have all this new capacity coming out of the Middle East, which may or may not necessarily be driven by the economics of the industry. Have you got a view on that?
Well, I mean, I remember saying that the domestic market wasn't big enough for any more than 2 carriers, and I believed it, and it was true 25 years ago. The market has evolved a lot. It has more than doubled in that time. So clearly it can sustain more than 2 carriers. I don't subscribe to the theory that today it can't sustain more than 2 carriers. I think it can sustain 3, 4, 5, 6, name the number. It's not the number of carriers that are important in this market. It's the capacity that each carrier puts in that is important. And but I think if you look at Australian domestic aviation now, it's never been more competitive. Your airfares, well, you know the levels of airfares that are out there. You know the different types of service that you can fly on. I think we've got one of the best, from a consumer point of view, one of the best domestic aviation markets in the world. In fact, no, I'd argue it's the best domestic aviation market in the world in terms of a consumer, benefits. Internationally, I think internationally, it's a different story. There's I don't know how many carriers this week, but there's probably about 45 carriers that fly into this country in one way or another, whether it's through code share or their own metal. And certainly Qantas's capacity share has been declining over the years, as you'd expect, because of the reasons you said. A lot of other carriers are putting a lot of capacity on this route. But for us to be a relevant force in the domestic market, and for us to have things like a loyalty program that is of significance to the domestic market, you must have international reach. And so we really have no choice. We can do one of 2 things. We can retreat to the domestic market, and that's quite easily done if we wanted to, but you'd have to accept that you would always be a second player, perhaps even third, depending on how far you want to go down the scale. Or alternatively, you can say, no, we can capitalise on the great business that we've got in the domestic market, and it is a great business. Have a look at the results in the last financial year. Even in a difficult year, the domestic business made good money. And if we capitalise on this great domestic base we have, the natural evolution is to play internationally. But to play internationally, we need to play with strong partners. Access to their frequent flyer database, access to their network, and so on. And we can deliver to them things that they are light on, like our domestic network, and our Velocity program that, as you know, has got more than 2 million people. Our distribution strength in this country, certainly in the leisure end, but increasingly as time moves on in the corporate end. So I think we complement very well the partners that we've chosen, and indeed other partners with whom we'll work.
The latest IATA forecasts say that after the rebound in profits this year, the industry is going to be under pressure again next year, partly because of weaker global demand, but also because of all the capacity that keeps pouring to the market every time there's any signs of health. Is that how you see the world?
Stephen, this industry is always under pressure. It's never not under pressure. And you're right. The moment someone sees a little spark of hope, the capacity keeps rushes back in. And then as times go bad, it takes a while for people to wake up and take capacity out. So there's a time lag. But whilst they take a long time to take it out, they don't take much time in putting it in. And that's been the case for years, and it'll never change. So what will next year bring? I mean, who knows? You speak to 10 different people, I'm sure you'll get 11 different answers. But the truth is that the Australian economy, or the Australian market in aviation, is relatively strong. The volumes are quite good when you compare them to other parts of the world. You've got some very robust airlines in this country that a lot of other countries can't say they have. So I think one has to be optimistic, and certainly I am. And I think that next year should be a reasonably, I'm not saying a stellar year, but I suppose what I'm saying is we've seen the bottom of the market, and it's really a question now of how will it pick up. We're starting to see some signs of recovery. The domestic market is responding a little bit better. The international market, certainly the dollar helps. So outbound out of Australia is doing better. I think you mentioned earlier something about the profitability of Australia and how important the Delta arrangement is to that. Well, certainly the Delta arrangement is important, but you know, I still believe that by the end of this financial year, Australia without the Delta arrangement, should come close to breaking even. So that in itself, I think, says that obviously the market is coming back to some extent.
John, thank you very much indeed for your time.
It's a great pleasure to talk to all three of you. Thank you.